Hello, Joy Brooks with Email and Coffee. Archetypes are universal, inherited patterns or symbols that form the foundation of human experience. They're fundamental themes that play out across cultures and millennia. The hero, the mother, the fool. And tarot cards are traditionally used for divination, but also for self reflection and exploration. People who study tarot often use it as a tool for self discovery. Natasha Guyot has studied the cards for 20 years and has been weaving stories through them as a way to help people gain clarity and inspiration. Email and Coffee peeks into her office with books and cats, and now, Natasha Guyot. Hey everyone, Joy Brooks, Email and Coffee. Today I'm speaking with Natasha Guyot, who's got oodles of interesting things. We're going to go a little woo today and have fun doing it. So, Natasha, tell us about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me, Joy. And yeah, we're going a little bit off the woo-woo deep end, however you slice it, but it's going to be good. So, I I'm in the pit of a transition in my business, so it's kind of like how do I even introduce myself at this point? So, in the past few months, I'm just going to say people may primarily have known me as the video sorceress, as I was a video coach and strategist supporting creatives and entrepreneurs create and repurpose videos to elevate their brand. And I was doing a side thing more of tarot readings for business and career. And I am currently in the transition of actually putting all, or at least 95, 110% of the focus of my business on the intuitive and tarot side of my business. So it's going to be intuitive readings. I use both tarot and oracle cards. And I'm also exploring other opportunities like creating resources for intentional and intuitive living.
It's really not woo-woo. I said woo-woo because a lot of people, when you say tarot cards, they either start crossing themselves or they go woo-woo. And the cards can be used for a lot of things. I mean, yeah, they can be a teenage seance, but they're really intuitive, symbolic, mythical cards that we can use to tell our own stories. And not the story that, oh, I'm going to fall in love and he's going to be, knocking at the door in 15 minutes. Not that story. The story could be, I need more strength in my life. I need to develop strength, or I need to get more grounded. I need to be more aware of the people around me. So a little bit, if you can, if you're able to, a little bit of what you know about different tarot decks.
Oh, so I've been reading tarot for over 23 years now, so I've encountered a fair share of decks. But just a little bit of story of how I got into that, because so that was pre-Google, that was pre-internet. I was 16 years old in France, and again, that was really intuitive nudge of just like, I want to start studying and reading tarot. And back then I did not have internet, there was not all the type of shops where we can find as many things. So I went to the French equivalent of Barnes and Noble. And in the esoteric tiny section, on the bottom shelf, in the back of it, there was a single deck. So it wasn't like, hey, like now where it's just amazing. It's, okay, you want to do that? It's this one. You deal with it. However you slice it, you deal with it. It just had a small booklet. So I only had my first, over tarot dedicated book like 3 or 4 years in. And so that was a traditional Marseille tarot deck, which is fairly similar for those who know the Rider-Waite-Smith one. It's kind of fairly similar. One of the biggest changes is that in tarot, for those who may not know, there are like 22 major arcana and then 4 suits of 14 cards. So it's kind of like similar to, playing game for these 4 suits, but the major arcana are kind of like really every cats are probably will disappear behind some cat butts and tails throughout the story. But the 22 major arcana are really like strong archetypes. We were just talking about symbolism. And and in these 22 major arcana, for those who may be familiar with tarot, so their strength and justice are inverted between the Rider-Waite-Smith and a traditional Marseille deck. But it's like, I think that de facto I had, a strong relationship with that deck, a strong connection, also because I was just happy to have one, so it was kind of interesting. And over the years starting to expand, but I really expanded after I moved to the States, when I started having more decks. Though, to be honest, the very first deck I got when I was in the US was another tarot deck that I actually have with me, which is Marseille Cat Tarot deck, which probably, if you know me, you've already seen me disappear behind Kenobi. You're just like, that makes sense. And I like how these days there is new retelling of the tarot, not necessarily like, we're changing everything up, but like we're going, to address the fact that historically speaking, it could be very binary, very gendered, very white, and really have ways of, okay, what do we do about these archetypes? What do we do about this energy? How can we, not twist them, but really communicate and dig deeper into them and make them more inclusive? And that's something I really love. Like, my most recent deck that I just got this week is actually, it's called the Cozy Witch Tarot. And as far as if memory serves well, the designer is non-binary, and most of the cards are really like femme, gender fluid, presenting, but really across a lot of different ages, of different shapes, different, ethnicity, different abilities. So it's kind of really interesting to see how the historical symbols are still really present, but how there's this discussion. I really see it as a discussion of how can we not so much make it more modern, but really more inclusive, while still respecting, the archetype and dialoguing with them.
Yeah, justice doesn't have a color.
Mm-hmm. Nope.
The sun doesn't have a color. The children, all of the cards, they're just interpreted for, for the audience that was using them at the time. And it was predominantly a European thing.
Yeah, Italy, France, some Germany, and a bit then eventually in the UK. So I find it formidable that, now we see like the evolution of it, because which is not removing the history in any way, but be like, okay, it's just growing and evolving as we do, as well as the practitioners also do that.
Well, because the cards were developed, right, through practices that didn't have cards. So dice, roll the dice will tell you a story. It was not just betting, but you'd roll the dice and a dice would come up and they'd tell you a story, or the entrails and all of these odd things that used to be part of the omen story. Eventually became pictographic, and then became archetypes, and then became cards. I mean, that's the playing cards. You could tell a story with the playing cards.
Yes, you totally can. And what is funny also is that tarot was also, there was, the cartomancy version, but tarot, I grew up in France, tarot is still, a standard card game. It's just that the major arcana don't look the same and are not formally the major arcana, but I grew up playing tarot as a standard card game before I even got my first deck of, cartomancy, symbolic and everything deck. So that's really, really interesting to see how the evolutions have got. And I really like that you bring up, the pictorial aspect, because we created pictures and painting, like cave paintings, even before, like the writing got really into place in humankind. So I think that this strong attachment we have to visuals is really also playing into that.
Right, exactly. I mean, it is attempting to take the unconscious and pull out a story from it.
Mm-hmm.
And, and call it, premonition or whatever you'd like to call it. But the truth is, well, I can't speak of truth because I don't know, but time isn't linear. We don't know, or we cannot, unless we're physicists.
Say that 3 times in a row.
Really, without spitting. We don't really. We're not necessarily, without math, capable of understanding how time really exists, and our minds are interpreting reality for us as humans, and we're using words. So when we begin to see pictures and tell stories about pictures, there is an element possible where our mind is actually able to pull something in that we don't see, we don't smell, we don't taste, we don't feel. It's out there. It exists. We don't know that it does. And that is, that's my belief. That's the woo-woo in me. That I have to admit that if I don't understand something, that there's something possible within that I don't understand. And that's the easiest way I can explain it.
Yeah, no, and that's also why I think like you make of tarot and over intuitive, or reflective practice what you want. Like even, without going into details, my own spiritual journey, I'm not the same now at almost 40 years old that I was at 16. It's just like there's been a whole personal, spiritual, professional journey that has got, but throughout that, like the tarot has been a self-discovery, a self, reflection thread throughout it all that I also then have been using for other people. But there's also this idea, like, everybody and their cousin now swear by journaling. And most of the time, like traditional journaling just me in front of my journal. And I love writing. I mean, I've been writing since I could barely hold a pen, but like that act of just, pen to paper for journaling doesn't really do it for me. Throughout the years, I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to pull cards, and then, the story of what comes up from the surface and digging in, and with or without taking notes, whether it's formal tarot journaling or just, kind of this meditative, reflective act it's been what worked for me.
No, it's I was actually, we're on the same page. I was just going to say the same thing, that looking at a picture and journaling about the picture, whatever, you don't have to say, and Mona Lisa's smile, you don't have to do it that way. You can look at the Mona Lisa, and then your mind thinks about a happy day, or a day where it was happy and sad. You could, it just links. It's like free association.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for ways to write, cards are good about that. And there are a lot of different games and cards out there that are available to buy, so that if you're trying to journal and you're finding that you've run out of ideas, a lot of these cards and the tarot are a good way of giving yourself a story.
Yes. And sometimes drive your university teachers crazy, which was my case, because during my first master, because my background is in, for anybody listening, is in film and media studies, heroes' journeys and storytelling, creative writing, mythology, to put it bluntly. And during my first master in film studies in France, I'm a huge science fiction nerd. I was working on Star Wars at the time, and one of the pieces of my thesis was looking at archetypes in Star Wars, but through the lens of tarot. And one of my professors was like, okay, you're going to cut that off. And I was like, I'm not doing it. And that didn't fly really well, but I stood my ground, because I was just like, if we're going to talk, about mythology, all these archetypes and what, it was like, tarot does the job as well. It's one of the ways we have engaged in archetypes in the recent centuries. So it's not less valid that looking, at Greek pantheons or other lenses.
Right, exactly. And the cards have Greek, they have Egyptian, they have Persian. I mean, the cards are a combination of so many different things that sometimes they work against themselves, and it can be counterintuitive, and it's difficult because you'll look at a card and you'll think, do I focus on the color? Do I focus on the any particular element? Or, should I just unfocus and let it happen?
Yes, and that's also where, the grounding aspect, almost that meditative aspect we were talking about, of just allowing the card to allow the experience. I would say even allow the experience as we're looking at the card, and kind of go with the flow, because sometimes when we're just like, going inside, picking that one thing, from a pure mind brain perspective, that we want to control, is probably going to, bypass certain things we actually need to see or feel or think of whatever at that time. So it's one thing if you're just like, oh, that first thing piques my interest, and you start pulling the thread and see what comes up, or being like, oh, today I'm just going to look at the symbols, or today I'm just going to look at the color, by really being able to be here, to be present, however we look at time, is I can really engage, and then, as you were saying, kind of let it happen.
That's interesting because you said the word control, and that was one of the reasons I stopped with the tarot, because I was looking for specific answers, and I thought I would be able to find them, and I was attempting to control my future, right, by knowing what was going to happen, and it was obsessive. Right? It becomes obsessive because, let's do the cards. Okay, it means that, and you come up with all these things. No, I don't like that. Let me do them again. And you're like, no, you're asking the wrong questions. You're thinking the wrong way. It's not a tool to tell you. It's not a voice that necessarily screams out at you. It's more a soft outpouring of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Yes.
soft.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. It's just, it's just a way to feel things instead of forcing things. So you're not saying, does he love me? And then you're thinking of love. It's not like that.
No, it's not. And I think it's a very important point, whether you read for yourself or, for others, is like, first of all, like I tell people, it's like, I'm not going to predict the future, because right now we're looking, at what guidance you need, whether it's a general one or a specific one for maybe one aspect of your life. Because first of all, we have free will. I'm just like, who am I to tell you that you need to exactly do that? I'm like saying, that's what come up, that's the insight, that's things you may want to reflect on, or consider. But it's like, I do respect your free will, so I'm not here to tell you it's exactly that. You can change things, and then, there's that. And also, like, for myself or for other people, it's even in my guidelines when I work with clients, I say I will not answer a yes no question to also honor that, because your interpretation of what I'm sharing with you, like what I am pouring out or pulling out of you, through the card and the symbolism, it's also, it's really that dialogue. And one thing I say is like, I'm here to facilitate my client's inner dialogue. I'm like, I do believe you have what you need to do to know within yourself, but like working through these cards, for these archetypes, and other, illustration, other pictorial work and story weaving work, this is how we're going to have moments. And then that's also why I'm like, if we're doing a reading together, you can ask questions. I'm not just here to talk at you. If you're just like, hey, I want a clarification on that. Oh, I see that context. What context? Hang on, let me give you some more context, because I think I see, what do you think? It's like, I'm not just here to be like, okay, this is exactly how it's going to be. Like, I want the conversation as well. Sure, I'm bringing something to the table, obviously, because of my skills, my intuition, my experience, but you're also part of it.
Yeah, that's, sometimes you'll be having an interaction, and the person will ask you another question, and you'll really feel the need to pull another card.
Oh, it happens a lot.
And it's because maybe you're looking for, I don't know, a color. Maybe there's something in it that you're like, okay, there's something in it here. If I pull another card and it's the same color, then I'm going to go and I'm going to say this, or whatever. It's just you're looking for specific things. I mean, there are people in the cards. There are I mean, obviously you've got the wands, you've got the pentacles, you've got the diamonds and the clubs. Wands. Did I just do that?
You have this. So you have the wands, you have the pentacles, you have the swords, and you have the cups. Tarot.
Swords and cups. Yeah, I went from the tarot right into
the playing card. Yes, I did follow.
So, and they all the major arcana are otherwise whole archetypes. So, like strength or the sun or love. You've got the major arcana that do that, and then you've got how many cards? How many cards are there?
So that's 56 for the minor arcana. Because overall it's always 78.
And they're all.
It took me a few years to remember my math there.
Yeah, right. So, so they're and they are all within the four categories, which I mean they can be people. So the pentacles are dark. It could be personality.
Not even. The pentacles really are associated more with the material world, in very broad way. Typically the pentacles are associated with the material or this plane of existence and the earth element, which is also interesting when you think about the elements and, astrological signs. The swords are typically associated with the element of air and the intellect and the mind. The cups usually are more like the feelings, the emotions, your relationships, associated with water. And then the wands are typically associated with fire and really like strong action or creativity as well. And then it's interesting sometimes I don't ask my clients, what their signs are. Also, sun sign is just a tiny bit of the whole, astrological chart, which is why, horoscope, just for the sun sign can be really reductive. While if you look at astrology as the birth charts, it's way more in depth, way more reflective, but that's another story. And sometimes, it happened to me because I got into astrology before I got into tarot, even if tarot is my bigger strength. For me, I still have enough, decent knowledge of astrology. And sometimes I see some stuff, and it happened to me when, we talk about that intuition of what, and I see something, I was like, okay, is your sun sign, or do you have in your chart, do you know if you have much of X or YZ sign? And most of the time it was like, oh, I do. And I was like, okay, thank you, because that really is screaming something about that part. Not necessarily bad, but just it's like, hang on a minute.
I go back and forth in astrology too. The fact that the stars are out there and they at least identify a specific time, because they're all in specific alignment and it's specific time. How they interplay with humanity, I don't know. I don't know. And when I say I don't know, I can't say, well, they couldn't possibly, be part of your personality. Well, if I don't know, how can I say that it couldn't possibly be if I don't know?
So I don't. But you don't know what you don't know.
I don't know, but I do know that I mean, if you get all the stars in a specific alignment, it tells you a very specific time. That's true. And again, here we are again. We're playing with the concept that time is not linear, but if you get all the stars in a particular alignment, it's sort of like, when you navigate and you say, point A, point B, point, and then you've got a point. And you know exactly where you are. That's what the stars do for you. It tells you exactly where you are. And also, even on the planet Earth, because the stars would otherwise be in some other alignment.
Yeah.
So it's grounding you to the Earth at a specific time. And that, that the stars can do that, that's meaningful in itself. Otherwise, where else? I don't know. Again, I have to admit that I don't know what I don't know. I just allow woo-woo to explain it. So, do you find that numbers and colors and things in real life are impacting you?
Oh,
Or do you
yeah.
try to like shut it down? Because numbers roll for me.
I mean, it's like, there's some stuff that I'm not going to say I define my life by numbers and colors. It's just that at the same time, I've seen enough stuff. And like, for example, the number 3 and 7 run with a strong signification in my family. And that's also something that I usually do. And when I can do a nod towards it, or sometimes even like I just redid for example, just last night I was just redoing my page, for people to book a tarot reading with me. And suddenly, I'm just making sure everything looks fine. And then, as I go back and go over it, I'm just like, okay, so there are like 3 points, 3 points in my, what to know section and what to expect. And then seven points, bullet points in my what to know. So it was like a 3 and a 7. In itself, it's not life changing. I'm not just like, oh, I designed it just to be like that, but I'm just going to see at it and be like, that's funny, So it doesn't always have to be like super poignant meaning. It just sometimes it's little synchronicities, And for example, when I decided to launch my business last year, I was, you always you can think, what colors do I want for my brand, the whole spiel. And for a while I was kind of confused. I mean, not confused, but I was like, do I need? And I went to purple, a specific purple and a specific orange. My dad laughed because he was just like, do you remember that's exactly the same color I did for your logo when you used to edit fan videos with almost 20 years ago, which I kind of still do, but I didn't consciously pull together like my fanish hobby, video editing side with my business. And then looking back at it, I was like, I don't even know. And a friend of mine who's known me throughout all this time was just like, I could have told you that's what you were going to go for. Yeah, well, I took the long road. So it's again, it's not necessarily, like life changing, or like I'm not running my life through that. It's just, there are some synchronicities.
But I think that we should be aware of that. Just aware that these things do happen. They don't need to be wonderfully, amazingly, incredibly serendipitous. Yeah, they don't need to be very meaningful, but that they follow you around. You should say, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Because it may be a moment for you to reflect something. I don't know what it is. The number, I have a 711, 911, 311. Those numbers follow me. Also 333, that number follows me. So I will look, I mean, they say that, if two times, there are 2 times during the day that, that are going to be the same time. And, it happens twice a day. But sometimes twice a day, I'll take a look at the clock and it will be 7:11. And I'll be like, there you go.
Yeah. Like you say, just being aware of it, because then sometimes, it's just like, okay, I see you. And sometimes, nothing particular is going to come up. And sometimes it's like, hang on a minute. And just have I would say the curiosity, not trying, like we were talking, not trying to control or, force a meaning on it, but just have that curiosity of like, okay. Is there something?
Yeah. Would you entertain me? Let's entertain everyone. Maybe, you could pull a card and tell me a story.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, like we were saying, so it's going to pull from, you can tell that this deck has seen a lot of use.
Yeah, right?
It's been very much loved.
You know what I used to do? I don't know why I used to do it, but I used to put them in order every time.
Interesting.
And I'm like, I stopped doing that. But then I stopped, I was doing too much. I was doing it too much. And honestly, here's the thing. I would read it from the book, read the meaning from the book, and I wouldn't get the intuition from the cards. And I was never able to free myself of the definitions.
Mhm.
I was never able to just say, just tell me a story, just talk to me.
Mhm.
I'm never able to do that. And if and you know, that I stopped doing them because, as I said, I have control issues, and I don't need to play around with my issues of control. I know that, you know what, don't do this. But I've never, I'm interested to see what card you pull and see what I see in the card from what I remember.
So I pulled the Four of Pentacles.
Okay, 4 is a nice number.
Mm-hmm.
Pentacles. Okay, we got money going on.
I'm letting you roll whatever you want, and then I'll speak.
Okay, wait. Let me put my glasses on, because these
There
cards
you
are
go.
totally different than the 4 of Pentacles. And I'm trying to think of what the 4 of Pentacles are in the read weight. So we've got 4 coins, and they're all facing. They've all got the. Is it the tower of something? Well, I don't know what.
It's a castle. I
It's a
think in my
castle.
view,
Okay.
it's a castle. Yeah.
We've got hats and green things. 1, 2, 3, 4. Four is all over the place. 4 is all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
except for the 2 and the 2 leaves and the I don't know what the flowers are on the bottom, but there's 4 leaves in the middle. There's 4 dingle dangles from the hat. There's 3. I don't know. You tell me. I'm like,
And see, before I go in it, this is also why one I strongly believe also that having conversation, between people who have done that for a long time and people, who may not be as familiar, is still always so interesting to, get people's input and see what do they see, because there's so many things we can see, so many stories we can tell. And, as I was talking earlier, the pentacles are typically associated with the earth element, with the material, possibly the financial realm as well. And but this cat in the middle is really trying to organize everything. It's really that like orchestra leader, maestro kind of vibe, and which is interesting because typically the 4 are also associated with structure and stability. So in that, for me, the cat is just like, okay, I have my plan. I am going to bring it to life. I have my strategy. I'm going to take action. But also, it's like this idea of action, but not like a very theory or like, it's not the chariot. It's not
in the
for
mind,
winds.
action in the mind.
And in action, in practice, it's like the very practical. It's okay. I have everything in my mind, and now I am going to bring it to life through whatever action I needed and concrete step I need to take. And there is this idea of, this idea of steadiness and structure of like, okay, there might be a lot going on, but I'm going to, take things one at a time, or if there's more than one thing at a time, it's like being mindful of, your inner and outer resources.
Mm-hmm. Probably, yeah, a lot of inner, resources, or at least, sort of, holding back, holding back. That's just came to me. Holding back.
And this is a time that is like, you may be holding back now, but you need to also make the transition of actually, it's an invitation of going beyond the holding back and actually, on your inner, your self-imposed holding back in that regard, and really like inviting you instead to how can you manage your time? How can you set boundaries? Boundaries around your time, around your energy, so you can actually make progress toward that action, towards, these different coins, these different actions, these different goals you may have. So it's like, okay, I'm making sure I have the time and the energy to do what I need / what I want to do.
Yep. The like are 4 coins, I like an even number. Is that meaningful?
The 4 is typically associated, like I said, with more structure. Like it's not necessarily a piece, it's not necessarily a number that is, it can be a little stubborn, it can be, a little unmovable. But as a pentacle, which is really anchored in the concrete world, it's like, hey, you're not here to just, it can be a foundation, you may be building a foundation, but you still need to, kind of put your money when your math is like, you need to take action. You're not just caught up in yourself, you're not caught up, just in your mind. It's like, you want that thing to happen, well, get to it, but be conscious about it. Like, do not just go burn yourself out doing it. Be strategic.
It's like a spring just before it pops. It it has a certain amount of energy, but it hasn't, it's like contracted back. It hasn't gone up yet, so it's that potential, measuring that potential.
Yeah. It can also be like, when you're ready to bring something to life, when you're like finalizing your battle plan, but knowing that you're going to battle plan, which sounds very warmongering, but like, okay, so I know I have my action plan, I am going to take the steps and I'm going to start engaging, but like, okay, I'm ready. It's like the ready, steady, and then you can go, which may, in that case, it's not full on go, like I said, like the chariot or wand card could be, but it's like, it's really transition. It can also be the transition from, being in your mind to the full on action, but there's really a big anchoring, a big, creating structure, and structure comes through action. You cannot just create full on structure just being in your mind and in your fortress without actually engaging with what you want to achieve and engaging with the world. So it's that kind of reminder that you need to be in the world to be able to achieve what you want.
Well, that's the 4 the 4 coins with the castle, and you said fortress. Being in your own fortress, in your own mind, in your own home, in that which is familiar to you, is that point where you start from, that point where you're born from, where you're issued from, where you're comfortable, home is where the heart is, but not necessarily heart, but where you start, not heart, because this is not an emotion.
But it's not necessarily, it's not the 4 of cups, but it doesn't mean that, we're not that rigid, the home, it's also associated with the hearth. And so, I mean, it's not...
this is more like the mind.
It doesn't really feel like it to me. The mind would be more likely like a four of swords. Like, there is an idea of the mind and bringing everything together, but like you were talking about, like a starting point, or a home, or a home is going to have the mind, is going to have the body, and it's going to have the soul. So you cannot just ascribe and tear it apart. You cannot dissociate like the 3 elements within also the home, or even that fortress, that material words. And because also, if you look at that cat that's really in the middle, and figure of the cat, they're in there. They're not, above it. They're not below it. They're not completely one with the coins either. They're kind of like enmeshed, they're in the action, even if this action is just starting and just laying off the foundation.
I gotcha. I pulled up the other deck, the one that I'm familiar with, right? The read wait.
Rider-Waite-Smith.
Right. Yeah. Yes. So I was looking at that card as we were doing it, and the cards are not that different. Their cards are not that different.
No, we're not,
because the city is behind him, right? There's a crown. There's 4 coins. The 4 coins are enmeshed in the body that's holding them, right? And color-wise, it's not that different either. So
Yeah, the original colors were fairly familiar. Like there was a lot of red, there was a lot of blue, of vibrant green, of yellow. I think those four are the primary colors more of the time. There's not so much. There's some brown, there's some oranges, but mostly it's really like these deep, these deep blue, these vibrant red, these a lot of gold, like yellow gold and some green. Those are typically the four main colors you're going to find in the original, really close to the original decks, whether it's Rider-Waite-Smith or Marseille, which also makes sense with, the pigments and the type of painting and everything that were also thinking, there were some handmade illustration, but also thinking in terms of like the printing availability at the time when things starting to be able to be printed. So there's also this aspect because of course, if you look like at painting even older than that, the color scheme could be much wider and vaster and more nuanced, but it's also like this aspect of printing that I think, had an impact on, playing card or eventually tarot cards, even if they were not as widely dispersed as they are now.
Right. Did I know you said you were a science fiction reader.
Mm.
So did you read The Wheel of Time?
I tried it like probably 15 years ago and the book fell off my hands. No offense if people like it, but I couldn't get into it.
The thing is it's a very long and winding road. I mean, as much as Game of Thrones is. It's an investment. I read the book, and there was a lot of cards in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of epic fantasy writers that play with archetypes and cards.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting when I'm reading and I come across it, I'm just trying to figure out how they're interpreting that into the story. And what they mean to imply when they do that. So how they're using it in a story arc. Sometimes, you know what? When I read books, when I read world building books, where they're using everything to build the world that we see and then the world that we think.
Mm-hmm.
The levels are like, they're astounding. They're astounding. That's sometimes why it's difficult to get into a book, because sometimes the author's trying so hard or the author's building so much.
Yes, and I love me some good world building, but sometimes, it's kind of like Balzac, who could spend 19 pages on describing a freaking cabinet. It's like, oh, hey, we get it. I know you were, it's like, I think this is also why, because of my upbringing in France and having to go through that when I'm just like, I like me some good world building and, and world building can be, it's better than just staring at 19 pages about a buffet. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I'm not saying I just want to read a blockbuster, but can we get on with the program just a tiny bit? So it's also for me like the difference level. I like, world building when it's really enmeshed. Are you still, at least moving a little bit forward, but
Right.
when it does feel. And also something I believe about books is that sometimes it's just not the right time or you're not in the right, mind space. I've had that like with some books when I tried twice to read them, didn't get into that. And like maybe 5 or 10 years later, I read them and I'm just like, this is amazing. Or sometimes, you read a book that you really love and you're going to reread it like 20 years later and be like, why did I even read that? Not necessarily, it's not reflective necessarily of the quality of the writing or the quality of the book. It's just that where you are now in your life is not the same.
Right. Did you what science fiction books did you enjoy? Because I'm going to mention a whole bunch and then you're going to go no. So tell me what you did enjoy.
One that was formative for me was by C.J. Sherry. It was The Serpent's Reach, which is one of her least known books. She's especially known, for Chanur and for Rainier, but Serpent's Reach that I read when I was 15, that's why I started writing my own books. So
I had I didn't have a French phase. Sorry. I had a
It's okay.
German phase. I had a Russian phase. Then I had a modern Russian phase. And then I started reading lots of different types of books. And then I went to college and I started reading the classics. And then I came out and I was still reading history. And then I started reading science fiction. And then from science fiction, I jumped right into epic fantasy. And I have not gotten out of epic fantasy since. And the reason they call it epic fantasy is because
For a reason.
it's series of books. So like, 12, the Wheels of Time is like 12 books or something like that. And
one of the first, like, I love when I was a teenager, and I've not read them in a long time, but I have them, was the Dragons of Bern by Anne McCaffrey. I devoured them when I was a teenager.
I love books about dragons.
Yeah, but this series was very formative for me as well, including my love of dragons. So, and I find that I'm not as into epic or, high fantasy these days, but I'm also like, I've been reading, like when I was doing my PhD, which I graduated from 3 years ago, I was mostly reading, I read a lot about mythology and cosmology of various kinds. And also a lot of feminist scholarship in science and religion across the board was also a lot of stuff I did. But I mean, we're talking about science fiction. I did my doctoral dissertation on Dana Scully from the X-Files.
I didn't watch it when they were on, but afterwards I did. And to this day, I talk about cigarette smoking man.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we don't realize the story, what the real storylines are.
Mm-hmm.
And I often think to myself as I'm reading a book that I'm missing the storyline because I'm perhaps enjoying the action in it or the characters, and I'm missing something. And I often think that's too bad because somebody else is reading it and getting a whole different thing, and meantime I'm just like, oh, those witches in those story, they're really a bunch of characters, aren't they? And somebody will come back and say, yes, but did you get the story? Like what story?
But I think that something I see about that is that, I mean, when you put out, any work, of literature, or of story, if you put any story out there, people are always going to bring their own lens to it, their own experience. And I think that's the beauty of it. So I'm kind of like, so what if you didn't get the real story? So what if you really engage with that obscure character that nobody else cares about? It's like, did it make the experience meaningful to you? Then if it makes the experience meaningful to you, then I'm just like, regardless, I think whoever got the story out, job well done. So
there was there's another book called The Malison of the Fallen, whatever. Malison. Another like epic fantasy book. And there's a lot of different characters, but there was one character in the book called Logan Bloody. They called him the Bloody Nine because he was a horrible murderer. But he has an arc in the story where in the end, he goes into exile and he becomes this like really heartfelt character. And I fell in love with that character. And I sometimes wonder, does the author love the character as much as I do? And I've had some conversations with authors about characters that I've loved in the books. Like I'll say, I really love that character. And they're like, oh yeah, that was a good character. And it's like, how could you let go of that character? That character is incredible. And it was one of many characters that they built. So the mind of an author is amazing. And sometimes they don't even realize what they're creating. And that's, we're getting back to, like tarot cards, because they're intuitively telling us a story about ourselves that that's not there, but it's there. So, we read a book, we read about a particular character, we get so involved in that character, we identify with that character, and we say, to someone who's read the book, oh, so and so, and the other person's looking at you going, no, and you're like, yeah, don't you remember when he said this? Yeah, I remember that. That meant this. No, but it's like a painting, right? Where oh look, that thing up there, it's an alien. That the thing in that painting is an alien. No, it's a cloud. No, it's clearly an alien.
Yeah, this from
It's not
this
wrong
from
with it. It's an alien. No, it's an angel. Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's an alien. So, and you're never going to agree, and you're not supposed to.
And yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's really fine. And also, you were saying earlier how you were never able to, get beyond it when you did tarot, but you were never able to get beyond the description, or the definition in the book. And I think, that was probably more tied to, your experience. You were saying you were just trying to be a control freak, so to speak,
Yes.
because that's something I often see, which, some people are just like, oh, if you're a real tarot reader, you will not touch your book again or whatever. But at the same time, it's like, I think it makes it more daunting to new people, to new readers, more than it has to be, because the books, exist for the reason, and, the kind of mainstream vision, the big archetype. And I'm just like, sure, I think that it would be really great, if you start looking at the cards, and you start as early as you can, just look at the card and what comes up for you. But at the same time, then if you need to look at the definition and see from the definition what may jump to you, I mean, that can make a lot of difference. And also, even if you're advanced, we all have our off days. And sometimes you're just like, I know there's something in the card I'm missing that I need right now. Then go open your book. Maybe something is going to jump at you because of that, even if it's not actually the exact definition in it. But it's another way to engage. And that's something I feel strongly about, because I think it has got to a point where not everybody, obviously, but it's a conversation and, and kind of, expectations of that I see. And I'm just like, no, if you need the book, to just get comfortable and, get more information, because it's not necessarily just say, oh, if the book says that, this is what I see. It's like, is there something else? Then because of that, it's kind of like the balancing act. And even if now, I mean, I'm going to say there are days, 23 years in sometimes, when, maybe you're tired. It's not that you're in a bad space or anything, but you're just like, maybe your energy is not the same, or suddenly you're going to have a big reading and you're like, okay, there's that one card that there's something there. And if you pull the book, like I have my all-time favorite tarot reference book that I love to pieces because it's fairly simple but very profound. And I like opening it. I'm just like, okay. And usually there's something that's just going to come at me that's not even what the author described. It's just like, oh, that jumpstart my own intuition, my own, reflection.
I was thinking, goes back to control. Me being, I am somewhat of a control freak, but the control freak, the antithesis of the control freak is the person who fears chaos or is uncomfortable in chaos. Therefore, when I look at a card, I'm looking at chaos that I need to order. And I'm afraid of the interpretation. I'm uncomfortable with reaching into chaos itself to pull out the meaning. I need to read the book for it to tell me what it is, and then I believe it. So I'm allowing the book to control the experience. And I realized that. I was like, you know what? I'm intuitive, but I'm not allowing myself to be in the moment, because essentially I'm afraid it's outside of my comfort zone. And my innate my intention is to control it. So it's counterproductive, which is why I stopped, because I was like, you know what? This is just exposing me to my limitation, and I'm not growing past it. I'm not letting it go. And it's sort of the same thing that happens to me with meditation.
Mm-hmm.
I can box breathe, but I have been unable to meditate other than box breathe. I'm able to relax myself, but I'm not able to relax myself and let go. I can't let go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that control part of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I have no desire to jump off a cliff, or skydive, jump. Those things are totally
I have no desire to skydive either, so I feel
zip
that part.
line. No, I'm not saying that they're horrible things. I'm just saying they present me with my biggest fears, and I don't like. A lot of people get they get high off of challenging their fears. I like to put it in a box and say, I'm afraid of this, and it's over here, and I'm
But do
not
you see,
going over
even,
there.
yeah, it's even like having that self-awareness, and then you had that realization of being like, hey, this is not working for me, and knowing why and honoring that. And I think that it's healthier than trying to keep pushing through something that is not working for
Right.
you.
So what I decided to do was letting words do it for me. So there's this deck. It's a game where you pull out a card and it tells you to tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I could do this.
And that's the beauty of it, of the different modalities and practice and finding what works for us. Because like I was saying, for example, that astrology was my, I was introduced to that when I was a child, but I am not at the point where I enjoy that to a degree. But for example, like, this is not a modality that I would be comfortable with working with my clients. I'm just like, this is not where I shine. This is not where I shine. This is not it's not a modality through which I can really help and support you.
Mm-hmm.
While on the other end, the tarot and the oracle card, I know that's my story, whether that's, my intuitive. This is where, and probably also why I was passionate about film and writing, because and all, symbolism.
Right.
And so it kind of like brings everything together. And I think that there is a lot of beauty and wisdom in, recognizing what is working for me and what is not.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it will change, maybe it will not, but at least honoring that part. It's like, oh, I understand what is going on, then I can make an informed decision.
Right. It's the most important thing in life, because we do change, and we don't sometimes we change drastically, but we generally change slowly, gracefully. And as we change, as it starts, we may be uncomfortable, we may not know, or we may not know at all, and then suddenly it's upon us. But having some sort of a mechanism that allows us to talk with ourselves about what's going on. And I would often, and I still do, I always, my term is go in the bathroom, close the door, look at yourself in the mirror, and have a conversation. Because usually those conversations are the most meaningful. They're the scariest. You don't need to admit everything to your best friends, but you really need to admit them to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that make you uncomfortable are the ones that you just need to work on. Like I said, I looked at myself in the mirror and said, you're a control freak. You need to figure this out, because you can't control it. And, you're going to constantly be disappointing yourself and everyone else, being angry, in a hole, depressed, afraid to move on, because you're constantly going to feel like life is chaotic. And guess what? It's chaotic. So move on. And I sort of learned that it was one of the 12, it's one of the 12 steps where you say, God, take it. I can't do this. Just take it. Because you know what? I can't do anything right here. So instead of me worrying about it, I'm giving it back to you, and I'm going to worry about what I'm eating for dinner. or, you know, how I'm going to pay the bills. But otherwise, you got the big picture because I can't deal with it. And you don't necessarily need to believe in God. You just need to say to yourself, okay, I can't deal with this. There's no answer here. I'll deal with it as soon as I can, but I can't deal with this now. There's sometimes, you know, I mean, I'm not saying, you know, within bad health, you just give it up and you don't do anything. I'm saying if you're presented with something that is so gut wrenching, sometimes you need to say, I'm going to take it one step at a time and you're going to take care of the big picture. Because I know at some point I have to take care of the big picture, but I need to know how to take the first step. And I'm frozen here because I'm so petrified.
And taking a tiny step is, you know, taking one tiny step at a time, or, you know, the talking, you know, strive to be 1% better, you know, at every time or something. It's like, it's better that taking tiny steps that are going to compound over time rather than staying frozen until you can take the big leap and then you're stuck for 2 or 20 years before you know it.
And that's the thing. And you can't take that big leap. Most people cannot take that big leap. I'm not saying everyone, but most people can't take that big leap.
And that's okay. And understanding that, you know, and then, you know, like you were saying, you know, taking that one step at a time, you know, that's, you can make a difference to yourself and to others this way.
Mm-hmm. So now we've discovered that I should start meditating with the tarot cards again, but I won't. I like my other
I'm not asking you to, so that's good.
I like my other decks. I'll stick with my other decks because I think I could take. I can tell better stories, and I won't get stuck in. It's almost like the cards are telling a story. How do I express it? This is how to. The cards are telling a particular story, and I would rather, like, it's too specific and I get stuck with the specifics. So I know that's not it either. I don't know what it is. When I look at the tarot, there's something going on there. There's definitely something screaming at me. I think I was in a previous life. I think that I was a shaman.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Do you believe in previous lives?
Oh yeah. I mean, my mother is a Buddhist, so I was raised with reincarnation being a complete normal thing.
You see, I was reading something the other day about it, and it's like I know that there. Where does the energy go? And what is that energy? We call it the solar spirit. Okay. But I'm just going to say energy because I don't want to get particular about it. Where does that go? And I don't know the answer. I do know that I have 4 times in my life I have fainted. 4 times. And those 4 times the lights were out. Nothing happened. I saw nothing. I can't tell you that, oh, there was a light and I wanted to go near it and I heard voices and my mother came and told me to wake up. None of those things happened. I was out. And when I come back to, one time I was with somebody and I said, how long was I out? And she goes, like 5 seconds. I'm like, I have no, I don't know when I went out. I just know I'm back here now. And I was not there. And then before that I was. So I don't know where I went. But 3 times in my life, one time very specifically when I was doing box breathing, I had an out of body moment. Totally out of body. and I can't bring that on again. I have no idea what it was. And so I don't know. And that feeling that I had was so bizarre. And I brought it on through box breathing. I don't know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't know.
And I don't know either.
Yeah, so I just like to admit that there are things I don't know, and I'm willing to discuss them.
And I think admitting we don't know is better than just being like, that, it has to be like this or that, even though we have zero idea. It's like, okay, if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I would like to believe that the energy goes somewhere. I would like to believe that, but I don't understand. I don't understand the energy that is the spark of our lives. I don't understand consciousness. I don't understand. I cannot figure out this human miracle that we are. And
maybe that's why it's a miracle.
Yeah, it's a miracle. And when you look at when you share a moment with some other animals that have they have eyes, even still butterflies. When you share a moment with some other animals and insects, they have a certain majesty that just blows you away. Now, you look at a cow, you can look into a cow's eyes, and you can believe what you believe. The same thing with dogs and cats, turtles, any animal that has eyes. You look into their eyes and you believe that you see into them to some extent. But what they think, what I think, it's amazing. It's amazing. How the devil, how is it that a bird comes back to its nest without a map?
Yeah, they don't have GPS.
Oh, this bird is stupid. Doesn't know what it's doing. It certainly does. Right? Or knows when to come back. So, I mean, they're limited. They're not doing math, but they're doing something.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
They're doing something. If they know, if they're flying back to that, to that tree where their nest was, where they were born, so they can rebuild that nest and have the next family. That's, that's pretty amazing.
That's something.
That's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So allow those, allow those questions to just hang out there.
Mm-hmm. I
So,
agree.
Tell us, where can people find you on the web?
Oh, so I'm active mostly. I got a PhD so I can invent words in grammar. That's what I say.
I do, and I speak English, so there you go.
So I'm mostly active on LinkedIn and Instagram and YouTube. That's the free space, and there's also my website. But LinkedIn for actual connection. LinkedIn and Instagram are probably the two best.
Is it with your name?
LinkedIn, yes, I'm under my name. But on Instagram, you can find me via my name because I currently have a specific handle, but I may change my handle. So, but if you look for Natasha Guyot, there's my picture. If you've seen me on this, you will know it's me. And when you so there's that. And YouTube is also under my name.
Okay. And yeah, she's French, so it's not spelled the way you think it is. So let's
it's
keep
Natasha
up on
with a
that.
C.
Maybe you should tell people how to spell it because nobody's going to be able to spell it.
Yeah, so my first name, Natasha, is Natacha, and my last name is Guyot.
There you go. Forget it. They'll never, I mean, it's French. There you go.
Fun fact about that is Guyot is technically the secondary spelling of a common last name. And the thing is that I spent all of middle and high school friends with somebody who had the other spelling, so everybody butchered my name, even in France. Which is why I'm just like, if you're trying and you're not a native French speaker, you're fine. I'm cool. Because I'm like, even in my home country, they just butcher it. You're good.
It's possible. It happens. So I thank you very much for being with me. Thank you very much for
Thank
telling
you.
me that I am a control freak, even in my cards. And that I need to let go.
You asked for my
Yeah,
input, so I
no,
told you.
it's okay. It's okay. You know,
Thank you for having me
I
on.
appreciate it. You've been lovely.
Thank you.
And have a lovely day. Have a lovely. No, you're in evening. For my listeners, whatever you have it lovely. Thank you.
Yes.